There's a story over the weekend, wasn't it, Hugo, suggesting that there were high-level talks between the King's team and Harry's team about doing shared engagements, that he wants to come back 5 or 6 times. And also there was a quote over the weekend saying that in many ways his trip back to the UK recently was to show Prince William that he could take some of the weight off him. I'm not sure I believe this.
I don't believe any of these things. I mean, this is what always happens. As Bronte says, you know, everything that Prince Harry does gets an undue amount of attention. And you know, even when he was over here, people were comparing the engagements that he was doing with what Prince of Wales and Catherine were doing. And it's very counterproductive. But having said that, you know, I'm all for him reconciling with his father, because he carries a lot of emotional baggage around with him anyway. The death of his mother. He's probably looks pretty unhappy in his present life out in Montecito. I also worry about the children, because there's going to come a point when they're going to say, why haven't I met my grandfather, on either side?
The coverage around him is not about the causes that he would be championing within the royal family. Yeah. It would always be about the controversies of the last 5 years, because that is the attention that he gets when he's back here. And I just don't see that dying down. Maybe, oh well, we're still talking about the Duke of Windsor and all of those sorts of things. I mean, these things live on. Yeah. You know, in the last 5 years has been extremely dramatic. But
the sad thing is he's good at, you know, I've seen him, you know, with out in the Caribbean, you know, he plays cricket with the kids, he plays football with them. I mean, and he looks very happy. He looks much happier, by the way, doing that than he does when his wife's chopping up petals and scattering them on salads and he's standing in the garden.
Pull up a chair. Let's talk about a story that just won't die. The tale of Prince Harry, who left Windsor for California and, according to a certain chorus, is now living in perpetual misery. The narrative is repeated so often you'd think these pundits were his roommates, witnessing his supposed torment firsthand. Royal historian Hugo Vickers is one of the latest to claim Harry is unhappy, as if leaving the firm is a one-way ticket to regret. The argument is simple. You can't leave the institution and find fulfillment. It's not done. The unspoken belief? The monarchy is the only source of purpose, and stepping away means stepping into a void. But is that really true? The idea that Harry is languishing in exile feels less like fact and more like projection. Some people seem to need him to be unhappy. His joy would upend their worldview, built on the sanctity of duty above all else. If someone can find happiness outside the gilded cage, what does that say about the cage itself? It's easier to call the escapee a failure than to question the system. So, let's entertain a radical idea. What if Harry isn't miserable at all? What if the laughter in photos is real and the quiet life with his family is exactly what he wanted? Critics see only the absence of royal duties, equating it with sorrow. But maybe, just maybe, they're looking through the wrong end of the telescope. The Harry is miserable narrative is a well-oiled machine churning out headlines like Harry regrets Megxit and Lonely Prince in California. These stories rely on vague sources and body language experts, painting a picture of a man adrift. The repetition is key. Say it enough and it feels true. Every public appearance is scrutinized for signs of regret, every quiet moment spun as isolation. It's confirmation bias at its finest. The conclusion is decided in advance and all evidence is bent to fit. This campaign isn't about Harry's reality, it's about upholding the idea that tradition and duty are the only valid paths. The real irony? This projection of misery reveals more about the commentators than about Harry. It exposes a fear of change, a discomfort with the idea that fulfillment can exist outside inherited roles. By insisting Harry must be unhappy, they're really defending their own values. It's a limited perspective, and a rather sad one. Now imagine the real scene, a home in Montecito, laughter echoing, a father present for the small moments that make up a life. No stifling palace formality, just the cheerful chaos of a young family. Harry isn't preparing for ribbon cuttings, he's preparing to live. He and Meghan have built Archewell, pursuing causes they care about, from mental health to misinformation. They're not waiting for permission or bound by royal neutrality. They can speak, act and take a stand. This isn't the behaviour of a man lost in misery, it's the behaviour of someone who's found his voice. Consider the freedom walks without press, family outings without spectacle, friends over without headlines. These ordinary joys were denied to him for most of his life. To suggest he'd trade this for royal protocol is to misunderstand the human desire for autonomy. This isn't idle retreat. Through Netflix, Spotify, and global advocacy, Harry and Meghan are shaping conversations and telling stories. He's moved from being a symbol to being a creator. Framing this as failure is a spectacular lack of imagination. It's valuing pageantry over substance. The real story? A man who swapped ceremony for creativity and found fulfillment. That's not a step down, it's a leap forward. Why the desperate insistence that Harry must be unhappy? It's not about him, it's about those making the claim. His happiness disrupts a centuries-old narrative that royals must sacrifice personal desires for the crown. Harry's choice to prioritise his family and well-being over institutional obligation exposes the flaws in the old model. He shows the gilded cage is still a cage, and that life outside can be happier and healthier. This unsettles traditionalists, whose worldview is built on hierarchy and duty. A thriving ex-royal is a paradox they can't accept, so they declare him a lost soul suffering for his transgression. It's a defence mechanism, a way to protect a challenged worldview. The misery narrative is a form of control, a warning to others, step out of line and you'll be miserable. But it's losing power. The more Harry and Meghan thrive, the more they prove there's life after royalty, a vibrant, joyful life. The most subversive act? An uncaged bird singing a happy song. It's a terrible advertisement for the cage. Duty is often held up as the highest virtue in royal circles. But what is duty, to people or to an institution? The version Harry was expected to perform demanded ceremony, silence, and the suppression of self. This institutional duty can come at a tremendous human cost, neglecting mental health, sacrificing family peace. Is it truly service if it breaks the spirit? Harry chose his family over the abstract idea of the institution. To condemn that is to elevate tradition above real relationships. Harry hasn't abandoned service, he's redefined it. He's traded ceremony for substance, using his platform for authentic impact. The old model was born in a different era. Today, we value authenticity and direct action. Clinging to the old rules is missing the point entirely. It's curious to watch someone build a happy life and have it called a failure. By what metric has Harry failed? He left a stifling system, protected his family, and built something new. In any other context, we'd call this courage and success. But because it's the House of Windsor, he's branded a failure. The narrative is absurd. Freedom is painted as imprisonment, happiness as misery. Critics aren't describing Harry's world, they're describing their own fears. They fear a world where tradition isn't the ultimate authority, so let's celebrate Harry's failure. He's failed his way into a life of his own choosing, a partnership of equals and creative freedom. If this is failure, many would line up to fail the same way. The joke isn't on Harry, it's on those who can't bear to read the new story. He's not trapped by the past, they are, and that's the real punchline. The royal family has long been a living fairy tale. Princes, palaces and prescribed roles, but fairy tales are rigid. The characters must play their parts. Harry and Meghan tore up the script and wrote their own ending. Their departure was a narrative rebellion, showing that the characters are real people with free will. This unsettles those who prefer the comfort of the old story. By thriving in California, Harry exposes the myths that life outside the palace is barren, that royal status is the ultimate prize, that duty is the only path to meaning. His happiness is a counter-argument to all of these. He shows the castle can be a prison and true happiness can be found beyond its walls. This is no longer just a royal story, it's a human one. It's about the courage to seek an authentic life, even if it disappoints those who thought they owned your story. The roles we're born into don't have to define us forever. That's the real fairy tale. So, where does this leave us? With a choice. We can cling to the old narrative of the sad, lost prince, or see a more complex, uplifting story. Harry's journey is about choosing love, family and sanity over suffocating tradition. It's about redefining success on your own terms. His peace and purpose aren't a tragedy, they're a victory. True fulfillment is often found on the road less travelled. Next time you see a headline about Harry's misery, have a chuckle. It's fiction, not fact. The real tragedy is for those trapped by outdated views, unable to imagine joy outside the system. Let's end with a truer image. A father on a Californian beach at sunset, his children's laughter on the breeze. He's not a royal performing a duty, he's a man living a life. He's not miserable, he's free. And that is an existential threat to the very idea of the firm. Because if one of their own can flee the gilded cage and not just survive, but thrive. What does that say about the cage? It says the door was never locked, it was just heavy with tradition and emotional blackmail.